The story of Lily and Jack Sullivan is still being written. And until they come home, everyone who has been touched by their story will continue to believe that the next chapter could be the one where they finally walk through their front door and back into the arms of the family that never stopped waiting for them. Thank you for following Lily and Jack's story to the end. If this case moved you like it moved all of us, please hit that like button and subscribe, because stories like these deserve to be told, remembered, and never forgotten. Share your thoughts, your feelings, and your hope for these children in the comments below. Most importantly, if you have any information about the whereabouts of Lily and Jack Sullivan, please contact the RCMP immediately. 2 children are still out there, still waiting to be found, still hoping to come home. Their story isn't over yet, and neither is our commitment to helping them write the ending they deserve, along with maps of the search area and timelines of their disappearance. To a casual observer, it might have looked like the workspace of someone genuinely committed to finding the missing children. But investigators recognized it for what it really was: the set dressing for Geddes' live streams, carefully arranged to create the impression of dedicated investigation. What made the display particularly grotesque was a detail that only became clear when crime scene photographers documented it. The photos of Lily and Jack were not family photos or school pictures that a concerned searcher might have obtained. They were screenshots from news reports, printed out and arranged on the wall like a collage. Geddes had never even bothered to obtain proper photos of the children whose disappearance he had exploited for profit. News of the arrest spread across social media within hours. But the reaction was not what investigators had expected. Instead of relief that a fraudulent actor had been removed from the case, many of Geddes' supporters reacted with outrage and disbelief. The hashtag #JusticeForDarin hashtag began trending on Twitter within hours of the arrest announcement. His most devoted followers insisted that the arrest was part of a conspiracy to silence someone who had gotten too close to the truth. They claimed that powerful forces were threatened by Geddes' investigation and had pressured the RCMP into making a false arrest. Jennifer Walsh, whose cooperation had been crucial to building the case, found herself targeted by online harassment campaigns. Death threats flooded her social media accounts. She was forced to take her children out of school temporarily after protesters appeared outside their home carrying signs demanding her arrest for betraying the search for Lily and Jack. The conspiracy theories were fueled by Geddes' co-conspirators, who had not yet been arrested and were working frantically to distance themselves from his operation while preserving their own schemes. Marcus Chun, the social media manipulation specialist, deployed his network of fake accounts to spread theories that Geddes had been framed. Sarah Martinez, the financial coordinator, liquidated the remaining funds in the donation accounts and disappeared, leaving behind only a cryptic Facebook post claiming that the truth will come out. But the most disturbing reaction came from within Geddes' own family. His mother, Linda Geddes, appeared on a local Calgary news program to defend her son. Fighting back tears, she insisted that Darin had genuinely cared about finding the missing children and had been devastated by their disappearance. "My son is not a monster," she said during the interview. "He made mistakes, yes, but his heart was in the right place. He wanted to help that family. He wanted to bring those children home." The interview was painful to watch, not because Linda Geddes was lying, but because she genuinely seemed to believe what she was saying. The audio recordings that had proven her son's guilt had not yet been made public, and she was defending the version of Darin that he had presented to the world, the concerned citizen trying to help. When the prosecution eventually released selected excerpts from Geddes' audio diary as part of their case preparation, Linda Geddes stopped giving interviews and disappeared from public view. The betrayal experienced by Geddes' mother was shared by thousands of his supporters who learned, piece by piece, that the person they had trusted with their hope and money had never cared about anything but his own profit. But the cruelest impact of Geddes' arrest was on the Sullivan family themselves. For months, they had dared to hope that someone out there was working tirelessly to bring their children home. They had followed Geddes' updates, donated to his efforts, and believed that he might be the answer to their prayers. Learning that it had all been a lie, that their desperate hope had been manipulated and monetized, was almost as devastating as losing their children in the first place. The arrest of Darin Geddes should have been a moment of justice. Instead, it felt like a second tragedy, one that had stolen not just money and time, but something more precious: the belief that people would help them in their darkest hour without expecting anything in return. Stay with us as we explore the aftermath of these shocking revelations and what they meant for the search that had been derailed by one man's greed. The courthouse steps in Halifax had never seen anything like it. As Darin Geddes was led in shackles to his arraignment hearing on July 12, 2024, two completely different crowds faced off across the street from each other. On one side stood roughly 200 supporters, many holding signs reading "Free Darin" and "The Truth Will Come Out." They had driven from across Atlantic Canada, some traveling over 1,000 kilometers, convinced that their hero was being silenced by a conspiracy. On the other side, a smaller but equally passionate group held photos of Lily and Jack Sullivan above signs reading "Justice for the Children" and "Stop Exploiting Tragedy." Between them, a line of RCMP officers worked to keep the peace as one of the most divisive cases in recent Canadian history moved through its first formal legal proceedings. Inside the courtroom, Geddes appeared smaller and more ordinary than his online persona had suggested. Gone was the confident voice that had commanded live streams watched by thousands. In its place sat a 38-year-old man in an orange jumpsuit, his hair unkempt, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Crown Prosecutor Sarah Chun outlined the charges with clinical precision: obstruction of justice, public mischief, fraud over $5,000, conspiracy to commit fraud. Each charge carried potentially years in prison. But it was when Chun began describing the evidence that the full scope of Geddes' deception became clear to those in the courtroom. The Crown will prove that Mr. Geddes never had any information about the whereabouts of Lily and Jack Sullivan, Chun told the judge. We will demonstrate that he deliberately created false hope in grieving family members and concerned citizens for the sole purpose of generating profit. Chun outlined the audio recordings, the financial records, the fake social media networks, and the coordination with co-conspirators. She described how Geddes had collected over $47,000 in donations while knowing that he had no ability to find the missing children. But the most damaging evidence presented at the arraignment was something investigators had discovered only days before. Geddes had been planning to write a book about his supposed search for Lily and Jack. Found on his computer was a 15-page book proposal titled, "Against All Odds: How I Nearly Found Canada's Most Famous Missing Children." The proposal outlined a narrative where Geddes would be portrayed as a dedicated searcher who had come tantalizingly close to solving the case before being thwarted by bureaucratic incompetence and jealous investigators. The book proposal included a detailed marketing plan projecting sales of over 100,000 copies and potential movie rights worth millions of dollars. Even in failure, Geddes had been planning to monetize the Sullivan tragedy. Defense attorney Michael Rodriguez asked for bail, arguing that his client posed no flight risk and had cooperated with the arrest. But Crown Prosecutor Chun successfully argued that Geddes' elaborate deception and network of co-conspirators made him a significant risk to continue obstructing the investigation. Bail was denied. As news of the bail hearing spread, the reaction across Canada was swift and intense. The Sullivan family, who had remained largely silent during Geddes' months of activity, finally spoke publicly about their experience. In a statement read by family spokesperson and Aunt Margaret Sullivan, the family expressed their devastation at learning they had been manipulated during the worst period of their lives. For 4 months, we believed that someone out there was working tirelessly to bring Lily and Jack home, the statement read. We donated money we couldn't afford to give. We shared information we had hoped to keep private. We allowed ourselves to hope when hope seemed impossible. Learning that our trust was betrayed, that our desperation was exploited for profit, has broken our hearts all over again. Not only are our children still missing, but now we must face the fact that the person we trusted most to find them never cared about them at all. The statement concluded with a plea that would resonate across the country. Please, if you truly want to help us find Lily and Jack, support the official investigation. Trust the RCMP. Don't trust people who make promises they cannot keep. But the Sullivan family's plea fell on deaf ears among Geddes' most devoted supporters. Within hours of the family's statement, social media was flooded with conspiracy theories suggesting that the Sullivan family had been coerced or threatened into denouncing Geddes. Some supporters claimed that the family was being paid to discredit Geddes by the same mysterious forces that had arranged his arrest. Others suggested that the family had never genuinely supported Geddes and were part of an elaborate cover-up. The most disturbing theories suggested that the Sullivan family themselves were somehow responsible for their children's disappearance and were using Geddes as a scapegoat. These conspiracy theories were actively promoted by the remaining members of Geddes' network, who were working desperately to maintain their schemes while their leader sat in jail. Marcus Chun, the social media manipulation specialist, had not yet been arrested and was using his fake account network to spread disinformation about the investigation. Sarah Martinez, the financial coordinator, was suspected of continuing to collect donations through copycat schemes while avoiding law enforcement. But the most significant revelation about Geddes' network came from an unexpected source: international investigators working on similar cases. Detective Inspector James Morrison of the UK's National Crime Agency contacted the RCMP with disturbing information about the mysterious third member of Geddes' network, the individual who had been receiving large monthly payments and whose identity had remained unknown. Morrison's team had been investigating a series of exploitation schemes targeting families of missing persons across the UK and Europe. The same financial patterns that had appeared in the Geddes case: complex international transfers, shell companies, sophisticated tax avoidance strategies, had been identified in at least 12 other cases, spanning 5 countries. What you're dealing with in Canada isn't an isolated incident, Morrison told his RCMP counterparts during a secure video conference. This appears to be part of an international network that specializes in identifying and exploiting high-profile missing persons cases. The revelation that Geddes might have been just one operator in a much larger criminal enterprise sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Suddenly, the Sullivan case wasn't just about one man's greed. It was potentially connected to a sophisticated international conspiracy that turned human tragedy into profit on a global scale. Detective Sergeant Lisa Morrison found herself facing the possibility that her investigation had uncovered something far more significant and dangerous than anyone had imagined. But there was no time to pursue these international connections. The damage that Geddes had done to the search for Lily and Jack Sullivan needed to be addressed immediately. For 4 crucial months, valuable investigative resources had been diverted by Geddes' deception. Search teams had wasted time and energy following his false leads. The RCMP had been forced to allocate officers to investigate his claims instead of pursuing legitimate avenues of inquiry. Most critically, the constant noise generated by Geddes' activities had made it almost impossible for real tips and leads to be heard above the din of social media speculation and conspiracy theories. Superintendent David Park, who oversaw the RCMP's Major Crimes Division, called a press conference to address the investigation status in the wake of Geddes' arrest. "The arrest of Darin Geddes represents a significant step forward in our investigation," Park told assembled reporters. "For too long, legitimate investigative work has been overshadowed by fraudulent claims and deliberate misinformation. I want to be absolutely clear. Mr. Geddes never had any special information about the whereabouts of Lily and Jack Sullivan. His claims were false, his leads were fabricated, and his promises were lies." Park's statement was careful but firm. "The RCMP remains committed to finding Lily and Jack Sullivan and bringing them home safely. We are following legitimate leads, conducting thorough investigations, and working with expert resources from across Canada and internationally." But Park's most important message was directed at the public. "We need your help, but we need your help based on facts, not fiction. If you have genuine information about this case, please contact us directly. Do not trust self-appointed investigators who make promises they cannot keep." The press conference should have marked a turning point in the case, a return to professional investigation methods free from the chaos created by Geddes' deception. Instead, it marked the beginning of an even more complex challenge: how to search for 2 missing children while an international criminal network worked to exploit their disappearance for profit. The investigation was about to enter its most difficult and dangerous phase yet. And somewhere out there, Lily and Jack Sullivan were still waiting to be found.